imports. But Australia's coal exports to China dropped 96% in the first 3 weeks of November, as vessels were held up at Chinese ports. Amid concerns that more coal shipments will be blocked, Australia has been cautious in sending vessels there. In December, no China-bound coal ships have left Australia's largest coal export terminals. China's Central Meteorological Observatory recently forecast that a cold current will sweep through the country. The lowest temperature is expected to hit China's northern Heilongjiang province. It will drop to as low as negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit, while predictions for Beijing's neighboring province, Hebei, are as low as negative 40. Reporting by Don Ma, NTD News.
The news jobs report is out. Unemployment remains about the same, but we speak to a senior analyst who says he's hopeful about the future. And the IRS gives a tax break for small businesses. They can now write off expenses paid for with forgiven PPP loans. We talked to an expert.
News outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
This season, take an incredible journey through 5,000 years of culture with Shen Yun. Discover why people are calling Shen Yun a visual feast, a pleasure to the ear, an epic tale, a must-see. Shen Yun, an all-new production every year.
The report is out. Much remains unchanged, including the unemployment rate. NTD's Phil Zhou spoke to a senior analyst who's remaining hopeful for the future.
The U.S. economy lost 140,000 jobs in December. It's the first decline in 7 months. And the jobs report shows a 6.7 unemployment rate, largely unchanged from the previous month. So far, the U.S. has recovered about half of the 22 million jobs it lost when the pandemic first hit. Senior analyst at FX Street says the report wasn't a surprise, with virus restrictions hurting the job market.
The jobs report was a disappointment, but it was hardly unexpected. It was going to happen as long as the economy is restricted by the orders and lockdowns and concern about the pandemic.
Trevisani lives in Manhattan, New York, a place hit hard by the strict lockdowns. He wants to see the city come back, but it won't be easy.
And I want to see Manhattan as a lively place for myself and my children and my wife and everyone else. That's the place where I live. So on a personal level, I find this very distressing.
But Trevisani remains hopeful. He expects more jobs to return later this year as government financial aid and vaccines take off.
Anticipation of a strong and strengthening recovery sometime in the second or the third quarter.
He says the future remains uncertain, but he's optimistic it will turn out better than the present. Reporting by Phil Zhou, NTD News.
The IRS is now letting businesses write off expenses paid for with PPP loans. That means a double benefit for business owners. They get free money to pay wages, and then they can treat the wages like a regular expense and reduce their tax liability. Before, business owners weren't allowed to treat the payments like a regular expense because it wasn't their money to begin with. We get the details from a tax expert.
The IRS is allowing businesses that got their PPP loans forgiven to deduct expenses that were paid for with the money. CPA Paul Miller says this is a big deal.
This is a true what we would call double dip, and my clients are experiencing much greater relief knowing that the expenses are deductible.
Miller says everyone is able to deduct. If you had a net loss, you could apply that loss to a previous year's tax returns to get refunds.
If you lost money and you incurred these expenses and you further lost money, you'll be able to carry back your loss and maybe recapture some of your income taxes that you paid in a prior year.
The recent COVID relief bill provides another round of PPP loans. The new loans are capped at $2 million, and businesses that didn't get the first loan can try again. Miller says the next round covers a lot more expenses.
A lot of your operating expenses, the protective wear expenses are covered. So it's not so restrictive as it was in the first go round where everyone was like, am I going to have enough rent? Am I going to have enough payroll?
Those who applied the first time can apply again, but they have to have spent all of their first loan, have fewer than 300 employees, and prove they lost 25% or more revenue in any quarter. Experts recommend hiring a tax professional to properly apply.
Some shell companies will now have to reveal their true owners. It's to do with a new anti-money laundering rule. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on whether this will stop the flow of dirty funds.
Criminals in the United States have used shell companies to disguise and launder their dirty money. In some states like Delaware, people can open these companies without revealing their identities. But now, under a new federal law, anonymous shell companies must report the identity of their true owners to the Treasury Department. Managing Director Keith First of Data Derivatives says the transparency is good, but a problem remains.
It's a step in the right direction, but it's not necessarily going to solve it because the other issue is the whole verification, right? So if a foreign individual, they want to open a company in the United States, let's say in Delaware, and they file the paperwork, they can provide perhaps just a false name. And what capabilities does the state have to actually verify?
It's unclear how states or the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network will verify this information. Last year, 2 men allegedly opened shell companies and bank accounts with about 700 synthetic IDs. The Justice Department accused them of stealing over $3 million from the Paycheck Protection Program, posing as suffering businesses.
They take the Social Security from one person, they take the date of birth from another, then they take the name from another. And they put them together, and it's basically a synthetic identity. So it's not a real person.
In other words, nothing about these shell companies was real or legitimate. Not the business, not the employees. But shell companies can be used for legal reasons too. Foreigners, for example, can use them to secure their money in a more stable economy. According to Fact Coalition, a corporation watchdog, some companies will be exempt from the new rule, and the information given to the Treasury will be accessible to law enforcement. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Up next, London's mayor says the CCP virus spread is out of control, declares it a major incident. The number of hospitalizations at 35% higher than the peak of the pandemic last year. Our clothing figures out just the right fit. Find out more after the break. Europe. Some EU diplomats are investigating if the Chinese Communist Party has infiltrated EU institutes after an investment deal with China was signed in secrecy. NTD UK's Neil Woodrow will bring us more news from Europe.
Hello and welcome. Some diplomats are investigating to determine if the CCP has infiltrated EU institutions after a recently signed investment pact. Our France correspondent David Vives has the story.
According to some experts, the EU Commission's commercial pact with China was signed in secrecy after the dissent of at least 10 state members and many EU diplomats. The agreement gives better access to Chinese markets for EU enterprises and vice versa. Zedekovsky is an EU member and one of these diplomats.
It's serious threats, and this is for the future for us very critical. Really find a solution how to stop the Chinese influence in the EU politics.
He says there's an investigation to determine if the CCP has infiltrated European institutions.
It's internal investigation in the European Commission in EEAS.
According to a former EU committee president, a fact-checking agency called EU Disinfolab lobbies for CCP interests.
This so-called NGO is targeting some specific people. I denounced the organ trafficking in China, and this agency attacked me. What's concerning is that the EU Commission bases some of its decisions on this agency reports.
Zedekovsky says some EU Parliament members show a conflict of interest.
EU democratic parties, especially what are linked with socialists, liberals, or with communists, but supporting some letters from the Huawei and from some Chinese companies. and I think they have close contact and very deep contact with these companies.
The investment pact with China still needs to be ratified by EU state members. David Ribes, NTD News.
The UK government paid over $200 million of taxpayers' money to Chinese firms with links to alleged human rights abuses of Uyghur Muslims. The UK Health Department bought PPE from a company which uses cotton produced by a Xinjiang supplier with ties to a paramilitary group the US accuses of using forced labour. According to The Telegraph, Nick Davies of the Institute for Government says these are incredibly serious allegations. Government is rightly committed to keeping its supply chains free from modern slavery. The Mayor of London says the spread of the CCP virus in the British capital is out of control and declares it a major incident.
The reason I've had to declare a major incident today is because I'm afraid this virus is out of control.
Mayor Sadiq Khan says 1 in 30 Londoners has the virus and the number of hospital beds will run out in the next few weeks. Last week, the number of hospital patients in London rose by 27%. In the last 3 days, nearly 500 people died of the virus.
There are hospitals that are right on the brink. Some of them are sort of over that now. And we've just got to hope that the whole of the NHS doesn't hit the brink at the same time. Otherwise, we won't cope.
London and the east and the southeast of England now have the highest density of cases in the UK, which is attributed to a new, highly transmissible variant.
People asking for your help, you just don't know who to help first.
Members were exhausted but safe and healthy. Spain's weather agency says the freezing weather and strong winds will remain through Sunday. A new type of clothing inspired by the ancient Japanese art of origami could help both parents and the fashion industry.
A London-based startup called Petit Pli, French for little pleat, is designing children's clothes that can grow. The innovative pleat system allows a garment to expand in multiple directions and contract back to their original size.
So Petit Pli exists because the fashion industry is the world's second largest polluter.
Yasin believes that children grow 7 clothing sizes during their first 2 years.
Inspiration that led to this was actually my nephew Viggo. When I purchased some clothes for him and sent them over to Denmark, by the time he had received them, they didn't actually fit.
One set of Petit Pli clothes can fit a child for more than 3 years.
Children can just move completely freely and explore the world as they are meant to, not in restrictive, sort of skinny jeans that are really not designed for them.
A pair of trousers that fit a 9-month-old child until the age of 4 cost $80 and top start at $95. The company is also experimenting with prints to hide stains and options for adults.
That's all for now. Back to New York.
And coming up next, Tinseltown is still in a bit of trouble as lockdown measures continue into the beginning of 2021. We look into what Hollywood's planning for film and TV production as the year starts. Calls and has the ability to connect to a PC. Find out more in just a moment. To 2021, several major film and television groups have called for delays in production due to hospital availability.
Hollywood may be on hold again. Several large film-producing bodies have recommended all in-person video production in Southern California be put on hold amidst pandemic lockdowns. The Joint Policy Committee, the Producers Guild of America, and the Screen Actors Guild released a joint statement. Along with independent film and television producers, they reached agreement on recommending a temporary hold on in-person production in Southern California. The statement included that major studios and streamers are already on production hiatus in Southern California until mid-January.
And the ability to share your work PC to the screen.